Collective Creative Initiative Drink the Ink. Bailey Harris Kelly is on, ladies and gentlemen, providing equal opportunity despite economic circumstance. The time is 11:30, and yes, it's time to sit down, cool down at last. Please rain today, Lord, up in Chichester or down in Chichester, and get the notepads at the ready. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us now for an industry Q&A is none other than the sensational actor, singer, husband, father, David Hunter. Please note, if you are watching live, we only have an hour to get your questions in and hopefully answered. So if you want your questions to be heard and answered by David, get them in and get them in fast. There'll always be a slight delay, especially with the clouds coming, consuming, but also we have people connecting with us internationally, coming from Hong Kong, Spain, Ireland, all over the UK. So subscribers, please get on that very, very quickly. Also, subscribers, you have, as I keep ranting and raving about, 12 months free access to Backstage, an actor's most trusted source for career advice and casting opportunities. So subscribe now for access. That is only for a limited time only. David is here. He is backstage. So David, a very good morning to you. Hello.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you?
Very, very well, thank you. How are you, David? How's everything down your end?
It's good. I'm welcoming the rain into my life and feeling a bit more comfortable. I'm not made to be living in shorts. My knees aren't attractive enough for such things. So this is a better pace for me.
Yeah, just embracing it all. Well, David, before we deep dive into your career, like the who's and why, I had a very quick chat with Caroline Kay, a performer whom you've never met, but you've successfully worked with the musical short The Space Between. She just wants to quickly ask a quick question. This was on behalf of her. She said, what is it like working with the world-renowned, incredibly famous Caroline Kay? Compliments only, please, David. And then she says, no, but for real, what do you think is the most valuable or important trait for a performer? And in the same vein from the collective, what makes the best collaborator for you?
Gosh, well, first and foremost, obviously it's entirely overwhelming working with the world-renowned Caroline Kay. But in truth, it was a very easy process. It should have been incredibly challenging because we wrote the whole thing using only voice notes and only texts. And yet we somehow managed to craft this short musical between us in just a few weeks. And that was kind of testament both our abilities to kind of compromise. And I think that's probably one of the most important parts, is just the ability to continue to learn wherever you are in your career or your journey, is just to be able to keep your eyes and ears open to working with people around you and acknowledging the skills that they have that you perhaps don't have and the things you can learn, whether the directors or your peers or your classmates, or whether they're doing things you love or things you hate. It's just watching and learning at all times, I think, is a really crucial skill.
Is that where content sparks from then? That sense of curiosity, that sense of learning? Because previously, last week, the collective agents were talking about content is king, especially right now. So moving forward, what for those that are tuning in, what should they do to really spark that creativity and build that momentum?
I think in terms of content and creativity, I mean, you are relying on exciting things popping into your brain, but I think really the way I've been looking at it through lockdown is looking at what might come next and what the kind of next step is and what's interesting and what's different. Be very aware of what's going on across the board on Twitter, on social media, who's gigging, what are they doing, and how can I respond to that? Not just in the same way, but in an interesting and different way. And I think that's what we did, for example, with The Space Between, was, okay, let's create something in lockdown that we haven't seen yet. So a musical written entirely in lockdown by two people who've never met, and just kind of how can we put a twist on ideas that are already out there and move them forward. And I think just that sense of trying to move forward, of trying to create something that hasn't been seen before, is what keeps you going. It's certainly what's kept me going, and trying to be on the front foot of what's happening now. How can I jump on it quickly? What can I do that's new and interesting and different to the people around me?
With the choices that you do make as a writer, how are you able to be so succinct whilst...
There's a small naked child that's just run into my house, and just to get his remote control shark toy.
I love it. Oh,
My beautiful wife Tara was on strict instructions to keep them penned in the rest of the house, but one of them just marched in naked as the day he was born.
Oh god, I love it.
Yeah. So sorry, what was your question? Do you like?
Oh no, well, just thinking about your child as well, like being bold with the choices that you make as a writer. How are you able to be succinct whilst keeping that audience always intellectually stimulated with what is going on? Because there is the space between. Earlier this year, you decided to make a song with 23,000 people influencing you. Like, how on earth are you able to just really whittle it down and then tell that story? Because you're so one thing that everyone knows that you do so well is able to tell a story with the tools that you do have.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's very kind. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I'm having a lovely time. It was. I don't know. I mean, I just, you know what? I just love it, and I find the whole thing incredibly challenging and incredibly satisfying. My grandpa used to carve things out of wood, and he used to say the thing for him was that he'd get his sort of lump of wood, and he'd imagine the finished product is already buried within it, and he'd just kind of chisel it to find it, to discover it. And I kind of look at songwriting in that same way, but I suppose differently with songwriting is that the things come at you from every direction. So it's almost more like a puzzle. You have to put it together, and you almost don't know what the finished product is going to be. I suppose it's almost, to contradict myself, the entire opposite of what my grandpa used to do. And this is kind of, you don't know it's like doing a puzzle without the picture on the box. And you somehow have to shape it towards and design that picture using all these different pieces. And the reason I love songwriting and hate it all at the same time is because it is endlessly challenging. There's no right answer. You can't go, yeah, put a tick next to it like a math problem. You don't know what it is or what it can be. It's endlessly challenging. But then when you strike upon a moment that works, it's just the most wonderful feeling. And so, yeah, I suppose that's the key. And in terms of storytelling, with The Space Between, for example, which was just 3 songs, me and Caroline spent a lot of time discussing these characters and what they were. We didn't put it all in because we wouldn't be able to, but we had such a knowledge of what that would be and who they are and what's driving them and what scares them and all those things. And so when it then came to writing the lyrics, they came relatively easily because we knew these characters. And certainly for me, a lot of it's based on parts of my life and the way I respond in arguments or with challenges. And so it was easy to go, well, I would do this, and that's the right answer. We only really had to write for ourselves, so it was quite easy to do in that way.
Thinking about the pieces of puzzle and trying to put things together, but there is a challenge. Obviously, throughout your career, you're becoming a bigger piece of the puzzle, as it were, and there's expectation that comes with that. So for you, how do you deal with the pressures that the industry is offering you and putting on you?
I think I deal with it by trying to take control of as much of it as possible. So which has kind of prompted this transition to starting to write some musical theatre, because so much as actors is in other people's hands and not always very reliable hands, and certainly not very predictable hands, because you could go into an audition and be the best person there or be absolutely right for a role and just not get it that time because you weren't quite as right as the person who walked in after you, or you weren't quite the right height next to the leading lady they've cast before you, or whatever it is. The challenges are endless, and so I just try to take control of as much of it as possible, and that equates to writing my own music, writing my own musicals, starting my own business with my wife, having a family, doing things I love outside of acting, because with acting and singing being my hobby from when I was a teenager, and it becomes your career, you kind of lose something in that moment because you lose your hobby. It becomes your career. And so, like you say, you heap all that pressure on. And I think the key to it is then rediscovering the things away from acting and singing that make you happy, that light a fire in your belly, and that you can completely control. For example, with writing The Space Between, it wasn't designed to make money. It wasn't designed to be put on as a full show. We did it because we love doing it. And it was really, we're very fortunate that people will watch it because people know who we are. But really, we did it because we really wanted to. And that was the biggest joy I could find from it. And really, that takes all the pressure away because we didn't mean to achieve anything with it other than making it. We achieved it just by being there and making it. And that was the whole thing.
Having joy, and just extending that very quickly, got our first question in. And guys, yes, I do love asking the questions. I am a greedy sod, but this Q&A is for you here at the DCI. I'm seeing the numbers are coming in at fast pace. So please, 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 we have already hit the 10-minute mark. We have 15 minutes remaining. So get them in quickly. This is from Kaylee Rose Allen, talking about family. So hello, David. Lovely to see you. How do you find balancing your work alongside having your own family? So just extending what we just said, I guess.
It's, you know, I think with like any working parents, it's a real balancing act, but perhaps ours is a little bit more unusual. My experience was starting Kinky Boots when my first child, Rufus, was 8 weeks old. So I started rehearsals with Kinky Boots, and I left when he was 2 years and 8 weeks old. So for most of his kind of very early years, I was in Kinky Boots. And then Heidi, so I left when Rufus was 2 years, 8 weeks, and Heidi was 3 weeks old. So I kind of went through the whole process during Kinky Boots. And so balancing having a newborn baby and a toddler and then a very newborn baby and Tara being pregnant through that time and all the challenges that come through that was, you know, difficult. And trying to do that sort of a show and that sort of a sing on very little sleep was also an incredible challenge. But yeah, they're difficult things to balance. And I think all you can really do is try to give it as much importance as you can. Try and make that time as valuable as you can. I mean, the challenge for me is that, in truth, I'm around much of the day. If I'm in a show, I'm leaving the house at maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I've kind of got all day to hang out with the kids and do fun things. But obviously my energy levels are incredibly low because I've just been dancing around on a stage and getting in at sort of midnight, 1 o'clock, because I live outside of London. And so it can be challenging. I've often said if I could have one wish, it would be to never be tired again. Because I could just give my full energy to my kids and then my full energy to my show and then my full energy to my kids again, you know. And I'd love nothing more than to carry Rufus around on my shoulders all day long, pretending to be a horse or whatever he might require. But it's balancing those energy levels. And we've been very lucky. I mean, in truth, and, you know, and I never would want to say that lockdown has been a good thing, because obviously it's not a good thing, and it's been tragic for a lot of people and it's been horrible for a lot of other people. But it has enabled me to spend an awful lot of time with my children, which at first was terrifying, but has become a real source of joy for me. And Rufus starts school in September. And at that point, if I was in a show, I mean, I'd never really see him. He'd get out of school at 3:30. I'd go to work at 4. If I was in a show that was on a Sunday, I literally would never be off. So, you know, it might be time for me to reevaluate very shortly and figure out what the future holds. And if I can juggle those two things in that way, and if it's worth it, you know, I either have to give up the shows or give up the kids.
But very quickly, I'm seeing, don't worry, everyone is firing the questions now. We've got a lot of waitress coming our way, David.
Sure.
With mental health, in that sense, where does that lie for you to balance it? Is it just there's the show, there's that family, then the family at home, is that where you find the balance, or do you have a specific thing that just makes you have, okay, a breather? I have to be the horse, and then I have to be the leading man. Like what do you have in place to just breathe?
I mean, I think the most valuable time of my day, however, even if it can be stressful in itself, is that commute into London and commute back. Because really that's where I find my headspace and my time to think my own thoughts and breathe my own breaths and not be a horse and not be a Dr. Pomatter and not be a Charlie Price, and just be very much on my own, independent, which, you know, I feel incredibly lucky to have when I have it, because I see Tara at home, and when her life is kind of 24/7 childcare, which isn't always. She has her own business and we have other things going on. But, you know, when you don't get that breathing space, which we found at the beginning of lockdown, when you don't get that time, just that hour a day to kind of just be, you know, walk to the train station, it became like a holiday for me, you know.
Yeah.
And I think, to be honest, I think more and more I've been like, I think I need to meditate at some point in the day. And Tara and I need to make that really important for ourselves and say, there's never a good time to walk away and say, can you take the kids for half an hour? I need to go and do this. But if we make a type of meditation or a quiet or whatever, or a walk or whatever it is, if we decide that is incredibly important to our mental health, then you take it and you make it a priority. And I think we have to do that. And I think it's what we've kind of learned to do through lockdown is give each other that time. If we need to walk away and just go, I just need to shut down, turn the thoughts off, which comes with creativity as well. I mean, as much as I passionately strive to be creative, as with the musical and any other projects I'm doing at any one moment, I'm very guilty of becoming kind of obsessive about them. And I need to find moments to go, don't think about it. Just do nothing, get bored, you know.
Well, thinking about footsteps, Lucy Horton has just said, oh, there's 3 of them. I love the name Rufus, but that's one of the comments there. But it just says, do you think any of your children will follow in your footsteps? Are they showing any signs of the performing?
I don't know if they will, and I have no preference either way. If I just want them to do what they love, I think that's the most crucial thing, and the thing that I look at in my life that has been the most valuable thing to me is just to have been enabled by my parents to follow my dreams and to support me in that, just in terms of cheering me on and allowing me to take risks, which led to these wonderful experiences that I've had, and have led to shaping me and my personality as it is, which is, you know, wanting to be kind of confident and front-footed about things and taking kind of, you know, reasonable risks. So yeah, whatever they want to do, I want them to do that. So if that's dance or acting or singing, great. If that is accountancy or art in some other way or plumbing, I want them to do that without question. And I just hope that they have a dream. That's all. I don't mind what it is. I'd rather it wasn't rugby, because I don't want to watch rugby every Saturday. Football's fine. Badminton, absolutely, because then you're in a warm room, maybe with a hot chocolate every Saturday. I can cope with that. But rugby is a no-go, if that's okay. But yeah, but they certainly, having said that, they absolutely are showing signs of the performance gene. But I think that comes from effectively from day one. We've been around singing silly songs around our children from the minute they were born and being ridiculous around them. And so they, you know, my son makes up songs all the time. I play a song by my son at every gig I do now. It's called The Bear House, and he wrote it on his own, and I just put chords to it, and it's brilliant. And he says he's not going to the bear house. There's a baby in his tummy. And it's just what he came out of his genius little brain. So I took it, and I'm going to get rich off it. And Heidi, who's my daughter, she's full of dancing and singing and just being daft, which I think is the majority of what a performer is. So perhaps there is a future for them there.
Just questions here. It's just an overload questions now. Back to Waitress at the top here. This from Colette, actor 97. What was your favourite part of being in Waitress?
I loved everything about Waitress. I absolutely adore it. I love the music. I think the music by Sarah Bareilles is the absolute star of the show as far as I'm concerned. I think those songs are brilliant. They're a pleasure to perform. They're so well written and for your voice, and the dialogue through them is so clear. The scenes were so clear to me as an actor. I loved playing Dr Pomatter because you walk on stage, you do a funny scene, you usually do a really banging song, and then you go off and have a cup of tea, you get a little break, then you come on again, funny scene, brilliant song, go off and having a cup of tea. So the work-life balance there was pretty spot on. Whereas with Charlie Price and Kinky Boots, I barely left the stage, and so it was just exhausting all the time. And I mean, I didn't get into this industry to work hard. I kind of thought there'd be a lot more sitting around and drinking tea. So Waitress gave me that in abundance, and I'm forever grateful.
Kinky Boots. Back to Kaylee Rose saying, Kinky Boots is such a feel-good show and will forever be my medicine when I'm in a bad mood. Can you pick out a highlight from the show, or is that just an absolutely impossible ask?
Do you know what? It's a funny one. Kinky Boots is a funny one for me because a lot of my happier memories got sort of drowned in my unhappy memories of the last kind of few months when it became incredibly stressful. Because I did the show for 2 years, and no one has ever played that part for 2 years internationally. And I know the reason why now. It's because in the last 3 months you might feel like you're dying, which I did. I was kind of on the phone to my agent saying, I just don't know if I can finish this. I was absolutely exhausted physically, vocally. I'd lost a lot of weight, and that kind of 8-show a week routine was just catching up with me. The long-term fatigue had just become kind of completely overwhelming. So it was difficult. It became really, really difficult. And it kind of, by the end, I was so grateful to kind of be able to have a rest, and it sort of robbed me of some of those happier memories, but which were there in abundance in originally. And I mean, if I kind of stretch my brain, you always think back to the people. And for me, the most fun part of the show was the running on the travelators in Everybody Say Yeah, which was just, after quite a kind of busy first act where the character Charlie is quite stressed and he's trying to put out fires all over the place, and then he basically gets to run around and have fun for 5-10 minutes like everyone else does. And so that was always really joyful. And you kind of always left the show feeling really uplifted because it was such an uplifting show. Whereas in other shows like Once the Musical, you sometimes left feeling a bit down because really the show kind of put you through the mill every night. Yeah. Whereas with Kinky Boots, it very much raised you up, as the song says. So in truth, it became a real challenge for me, that show. But obviously the fact I was there for 2 years is indication that I obviously did enjoy an awful lot of it from the get-go. But I think, like I said before, and you remember through all this, that Rufus is a 8-week-old going on to a 2-year-old. And I didn't really sleep very much through that period of time. And so for that last 3 months, I honestly just wondered if I might this might be the end for me. Like it might be, I don't do another show after this, because I was really at a breaking point with it. And and it was stressful. It was really stressful. And I think it's probably my lowest ebb in those last sort of 3 months, where I went, I just don't know if I can do this anymore, and certainly can't do 2 years anymore. It's just too much,
Yeah, but like being at breaking point, restarting, resetting, as it were. Lucy, just a question from her here is just saying, how do you keep being yourself at auditions and not changing yourself to what they want you to be?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, you never really know what they want you to be, so that's the kind of that's always the difficulty. But I'm very much of the thinking that you go in, as hard as this is, and you say, this is what I am. And if you want me to do a job for you, great. If you don't, then let's not, because if you don't want me and everything I bring to the table, then we shouldn't be working on this together. That's happened in auditions in the past, where I've seen someone else audition and thought, well, if they want that, then that's not for me. That's not what I want to do, and it's not what they want. So, fine. But I don't know. I think the thing that keeps me, I think in many ways in an audition, you revert to your most sort of basic self, in that I go in and I'm nervous, and but I'm confident because I've done some work before and I know that I'll do a good job. But I am nervous, and I'll never escape those nerves. And to be honest, I never want to. And so it's just very much, I am just very much me as I walk into an audition and go, you know what, this is what I am. I'm going to be friendly. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to try and do a good job. And that's all my job is, And I think sometimes that's worked in my favor. I think there's a lot about going into an audition with a bag of nerves, that you can control and that you can harness, but that makes you real and vulnerable and interesting. And I've often played real and vulnerable and interesting roles, and I kind of thank my nervousness for that,
Thinking about that audition room, and just before that, what motivates you about the projects that you take on? Is it just about those interesting type of people? Is it the whole setup of the show? Is it the people that are going in? For you, what makes you tick? Stylistically, what does it do for you?
I think I always know when it's music that speaks to me. I like a lot of people in the world, I have a real real reaction to music, and if it really speaks to me, then I want to sing it, and I want to feel it, and I want to enjoy it and go on that journey. So you just want great material. I don't feel like I'm someone who's, and I don't think many people do, who can be, you know, too picky when it comes to shows. But having said that, I'm very quick. I don't go to auditions that I don't think I'm right for, because I don't want to waste my time. You know, I don't think I'm going to go in to Les Mis, for example. It's not what I want to do. It's not the style that I singing. It's not for me. And so, having said that, it's a brilliant show. That's not to say take away from the show. It's just that I don't sing in that way, and I don't want to sing in that way. I'm a contemporary singer, and I think, you know, from having done a few shows and things, you get a bit better at going, that's not what I do. I do this, and I love doing this, so I'll wait for that. And sometimes hard to be picky, but I've just been very fortunate. And sometimes, to be honest, there's roles I haven't got which would have taken me down a very different route, and I'm very grateful that they didn't in hindsight. But at the time, I would have ripped your arm off to get them. And really, fate just kind of steered me in the right direction, I suppose, or fate or luck or just nonsense, you know. But I've been very grateful for the shows I've been in, and I love them all. And I'm very proud of them all, and they affect me in that way with their music. Once, or Kinky Boots, or Waitress, or The Hired Man, or Susical, like such different musicals, but they all kind of hit me somewhere in my guts, you know, in my heart and in my head.
That music hitting the chord, as it were, the core of you. Do you use, how do you tap into character? In the comment box below, there's a lot of questions about, do you have a particular technique? Or does that technique change for character? Do you go for the physical to get in with the music, or do you just use the mind, or you just play with it, see what happens with the music?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, yeah, the music just hits me. It just grabs me, and there's nothing I can do about it. And all I try and do is listen, really, and just try and channel it through me, as ridiculous as that sounds. But I just hear it and try and find your way into that space where you can just kind of let it all flow out of you. I try not to try too hard, in truth. Just let it be and let it come. In terms of character, the reality is that because it's so competitive in audition sense, that you tend to be cast in roles you're incredibly right for. So in terms of character, I often don't have to work very hard to find them, because they're 90% me and kind of 10% what's written on the page. And so, you know, and I can say that on Once, or Kinky Boots, or Dr Pomatter, in Waitress, the three are very different characters, but they're very much facets of me, and I'm very right for each of those roles. And I just kind of chip into that little corner of myself that is very much those parts. And Dr Pomatter was the most fun of those parts, because it allowed me to be my kind of clumsiest, kind of geekiest version of me, which I really like, you know. But yeah, I understand all those characters, and I think that's why I was cast as those characters. So then I don't have to work very hard, which again is lovely, because I didn't get into this job to work very hard. So it's nice to just kind of like stroll around becoming these characters. But yeah, I think I've been cast as roles that I really relate to. And I think that's the case for most actors, until perhaps you get to a level where you can pick really challenging roles that really take you away from who you are. But in truth, I don't know if I would. I really like playing roles that I really relate to and really feel connected to.
With that, and then with those roles, and then doing the gigs, and, you know, like, for example, the Other Palace, and then and doing that, is there always a different sensation when you are, obviously with the roles, you bring yourself to the roles, you're very similar, but when you are just you in that concert environment, is there different thoughts going in your head, the different setup, or is it just hone in, boom?
Yeah, it's yeah, I don't know. It's I think I'm really kind of doing the same thing in all those versions. It's a weird thing as an actor, of kind of like constantly evaluating yourself and what you're doing and how you're performing, and how is that affecting an audience, and what to say next. And I think the exciting thing about gigging, and anyone who's been to one of my gigs will know I do a lot of talking, at my gigs and talking a lot of nonsense. And I just love that flying by your seat in the pants, kind of trying to meander your way through a gig and playing other songs and kind of chatting about them. And where does that take you? Does it take you to a story that's kind of deep and emotional, or to a story that's absolute nonsense? And just kind of moving and editing and working constantly for that hour with no idea what's going to come out your mouth apart from the songs you've written down is such a thrill. And obviously very different from being on stage with a script. But no, it's not. But I suppose I do kind of feel like when I'm on stage myself, I'm showing as much as myself as I am when I'm on stage as a character. I think I just let it all pour out. And as I say, I've never had to play a character. Maybe Guy in Once is kind of the biggest removal from me in every day, because he had to kind of be very much at his lowest ebb for much of the show and in a real kind of a ditch of depression. And that was a hard place for me to get to every night, because my genuine sort of outlook is very positive and very joyful and very uplifting and all those things. And so but obviously I felt those sort of darker moments in my life, as all of us have, and channeling into that every night was probably the biggest stretch in terms of how I like to appear on stage. And just, whereas Dr. Pomatter, you stroll on stage, you give it your energy, you're upbeat, you're happy, you're clumsying around, and you just have a good time. So yeah, that was probably the biggest one.
Holding yourself and having ownership, as it were. Quickly went through some earlier footage of yourself, thinking about like Superstar, for example, Andrew Lloyd Webber talking about your charisma, building that. How long did it take to build that shield at his work? Because we'll go to this in a moment with Colette. I promise, Colette, we'll be with you in a moment with your question. Sorry, I'll get greedy. I'll get carried away in a minute. And it's just me and David. But like building that, is that something that you just have? Because this is the discussion again about just the natural talent, this talent, working on it. Is this something that you had to really like nurture, that charisma that people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you'd have met me as a 20-year-old, I was a very, very different lad, really. I mean, growing up through high school, I was very quiet. I kind of kept my head down and didn't say a lot. And I kind of found a confidence through drama and then singing and then songwriting and then being in a band. But if I go back to my first gig at the Night and Day Cafe in Manchester with my band that I was in 10 years ago, I stood there glued to my microphone, like holding on for dear life. There wasn't, I wouldn't say there was an inch of charisma, maybe a sort of nice sort of pathetic charm about me. I don't know, but like certainly nothing too charismatic. But yeah, I just, you learn it through doing and growing and people telling you you're doing a good job. I mean, it's up to you to kind of bravely dive in and try something and maybe take one hand off the microphone and do a quick gesture before it magnetizes back. But then you need someone to come up to you and say, I thought you were great tonight. I loved what you did with that, or whatever, or your voice is, the way you act, or whatever it is. And I would even say, as getting to Superstar stage in my life and career, people were saying things to me at Superstar that I didn't know about myself. People saying, it was then that I realized that a lot of other actors weren't necessarily approaching the material in the same way I would. And a lot of them were saying how unique I was and how different my approach was, and how, you can really, when I'm singing, you can really tap into my thoughts, my feelings, like quite complex ideas. And I was like, oh, really? And it was, and I didn't know. How are you supposed to know? Until someone tells you, how do you know what you're good at? I mean, you can have a guess. I didn't know. I didn't know if everyone was walking into these auditions and singing as well as I was, or acting as well as I was, or whatever it was. And I look back at the first audition, there's a clip of it, and we're on the stage at Brixton Academy, and it's Mel C and David Grinrod and Jason Donovan, and I sang my song, and they kind of finished and were like, "Wow, brilliant! Thank you." And I went out and was like, oh, I hope I got through. I think it went quite well. And watching it back, it was so clear. They were all going, wow, that was amazing. Thank you. You're amazing. See you in a minute, sort of thing. But you don't see it. You don't know. You're second guessing until I watched it back and went, wow, I did a really good job there. I think I might be quite good at this. Who knew? But yeah, I think that confidence and that charisma, it grows in time. And even then, the kind of self-doubt and the nerves don't go away. I'm kind of riddled with self-doubt. You know, I wrote a musical, which I've never done before, about a month ago. And now I don't think I can write anything. I sit with my guitar and go, I couldn't write if my life depended on it. I have nothing to offer the world. I'm a hack. They're all going to find me out. They won't want to interview me on CCI anymore. I'll be gone. And you know, it's just up and down all the time. But I'm in a funny place now, I think, in life where I very much believe in my ability, but that doesn't take away my doubts about the industry, and that it could be Waitress could be my last show that I ever do, because who can predict these things? And so I really do want to create my work and create my own opportunities so that I can just keep creating things, because that's the whole point, right? That's why I'm doing it in the first place. So that's what I need to focus on, I think, and do that.
Would you say you're a performer who's very much rooted within the present moment, or do you look to the future, or has that perspective, following what you were just saying, has it changed?
I think I stay in the moment. I really enjoy where I am at any one point in time. I'm really grateful for what I've got, and I look back at sort of once when I started as a standby and I was backstage, and I loved it. I loved being on stage. I loved being off stage. If I was on, I loved it. If I was off, we'd order Domino's, we'd play FIFA, and I'd love every minute. No part of me resented the person who was playing the role, Declan Bennett, and no part of me was desperate to take over. But then when the opportunity came, I was really grateful for that, and then I really loved playing it 8 times a week. And the opportunities that brought. And then I could look forward and think, oh, what might come next? But I very much live in the moment, because I do kind of think any one of these could be my last show. And with the kids the age they are, there's kind of a sense of living in the moment in that way as well, and going, they'll only be young and this age once, and that's it, so you've kind of got to invest in that and whatever stage and phase they're in. But yeah, and I think it's hard to look ahead too far. But I've always been kind of, I appreciate where I am. I appreciate the people I spend my life with, and I appreciate my agent. I've been my agent for 10 years, and so many of my peers and colleagues will jump from agent to agent trying to find that magic one who can suddenly get you a major Hollywood movie, having done Mamma Mia for 2 years, and you think, oh, now I'm going to be in Brad Pitt's new film. But it's like, it doesn't work like that for my money. It's like, this is the road you're on. That my agent is kind to me. She appreciates where I'm at. She appreciates me if I say I don't want to do that thing. I do want to do that thing. She tries to get me those opportunities, and so we have a lovely relationship, and that is much more valuable to me than maybe chasing the next shiny object, So I've always had a kind of nice mix of being like, I love where I am, I appreciate what I've got, but obviously I'd like something else. But in truth, pal, my all my dreams came true. Obviously I'm not a rich bajillionaire, but I only ever wanted to play a lead in a West End show. That's what I always wanted to do, and I've done it. And so now, you realize then as a teenager, you thought if I was a lead in a West End show, I'd be rich and famous and everything would be brilliant. And obviously that isn't necessarily the case. But that was my dream, and I've achieved it. So now it's different game now. I'm just kind of, I don't know what I'm doing. Just trying to do whatever comes next and enjoy it.
The initial spark, Colette. We're going to now, right now.
Come on, Colette.
Colette, actor 97. When you're going to be a performer, going back to the very, very roots. And we've only hit on that when we're approaching the last third of this Q&A. Thanks again, David. That initial spark, that bug happened where you went, okay, yeah, I want to be that leading man.
It came from finding myself within the arts and finding friends and peers through the arts. So, I was kind of dragged along to whatever my sister wanted to do as a kid. So we tried horse riding and trampolining and gymnastics and, oh gosh, all sorts. And then we stumbled across sort of drama, dance and singing classes at like a stagecoach summer school type thing for a week. And I went to that and kind of I admired the people around me. I admired the people who did it very well. And I wasn't one of those people. And I started fancying the girls who were at drama, and I started kind of writing songs to try and impress girls, and it worked. And so I just kept doing it. So, I mean, really, my whole career has just been driven by trying to get a girlfriend. And now I've got a wife and kids, so I nailed it. But yeah, you know, I just found the confidence in it. And in my GCSE year, I was in my drama class, a very quiet lad, and I kind of found some confidence in drama. My teachers at school were very supportive and recognized that in me. And then the girls in the class, the very popular girls, started being like, oh wow, and like acknowledging me in the corridor, which they'd never done before. And I kind of had this thing I was good at, and people liked, you know. Because I mean, aren't we all just trying to be liked? Isn't that just it? So yeah, and I just kind of kept doing that. People liked me when I did it, and I liked doing it, and I grew in confidence, and started seeing shows in Manchester and Liverpool, and watching Jesus Christ Superstar, for example, and going, how do those men sing like that? How do you do that? And like I said, and so yeah, just from there, really, I just kind of wanted to. I just yeah, and like I say, it's always been rooted from like the time I started acting at all, sort of like 15, 16. It's quite late to it in child terms. There's so many kids much younger than that who know so much more about it than I did, and are so much more advanced. But it was always rooted. I started songwriting. As soon as I started singing, I was songwriting. And so it was always about a creative outlet for me. Like my songwriting was my therapy. And it was everything. Every girl I was madly in love with who didn't love me back, they had a song, you know, and every time I was frustrated, it had a song. And so my whole career has been about creating at any one point. And so it will forever be that way, that I'll always write. I don't write songs to try and have hit records. I write songs because I don't know how not to write songs. Like I will never stop writing songs or trying to write books or novels, or I'm always trying to write something because I like need to create stuff, not for anyone else but myself. And I'm just very fortunate that I've reached a point in my career where people might take an interest in things that I release. And I know that if I released a kid's book tomorrow, there'd be a whole heap of people go, yeah, I'll check that out. Why not? Because we know you're from Waitress. And that's been the most lovely thing for me, that I can release an EP or I can release a musical, as we did, and people will take a vague interest because they know me from these other things. And so I suddenly have this outlet for my creativity to say, I can do whatever I want, package it, which is this creativity of like, how do you sell these things to people? I love all that stuff. Like when we're doing gigs, like, how do we promote this gig and make it interesting and make it desirable and make it like something you want? And I've got this great idea for my next EP when that comes out, which I haven't even written or recorded yet. But the way I'm going to release it is so unique and it's going to be so brilliant. And I can't wait to do it. But this is a million miles away. But I just need to do that. And I just feel very grateful to the people, like some of the people who are watching now, who have followed my career thus far and therefore have an interest in what I'm doing and allow me to kind of just say to a very small group of people, I don't get stopped in Tesco. No one knows who I am. But when I say I've released some music, there's a handful of people who will go, we'll listen to that. And that's so wonderful for me that there's ears ready to listen. And if someone kind of adopts one of these songs and loves it and is listening to it in sort of 20 years time on ye olde iTunes and saying, oh, this was a banger in 2020, then that's it for me. That's the whole point, you know. Like, that was a rant, wasn't it? That went on.
Oh no, love it here at CCI. Guys, just quickly, we have only got approximately 15 minutes remaining. Get those questions in now. So far, we have the regulars. We've got another one coming up from Katie Rose Allen in a moment's time. Colette's been taking over the questions as well. Come on, get your questions in there, those that are tuning in. Don't be afraid. Any question, a good question within reason. But just thinking about being heard, you have that group that does listen to your voice, thinking about how distinctive your voice is, your tone, your sound, thinking about vocal hygiene again and looking after that voice just on there, because there'll be some performers like, oh, but how do you just, sustain it and carry through with it? Because, when you're talking about Kinky Boots, you just hit that toll. So what did you just do to be like, oh, I don't die on stage, essentially?
You've just got to take incredible care of yourself. I mean, you'll never yeah, by doing sort of 8 shows a week, you become stronger than you could ever be. But you also kind of become more vulnerable than you'll ever be. You're kind of constantly absolutely exhausted, but ready and warm and ready to go at any one moment. So there's something about, it's almost like the show kind of carves out a path in your voice. It kind of, however tired you wake up that morning, some mornings you can't do it. You just can't do it, and you're out, and you have to acknowledge that and go, I'm out. That's fine. I need to rest. This is a superhuman thing we're trying to do 8 times a week. You can't do it all the time. We are not robots. I honestly think it is like running a marathon every night, especially if you're tired or if you have a cold, which we all get year in, year out. You have a cold and you're running this marathon. You do it night after night after night, after 2 nights, after night after night, and then twice again every week for what seems like forever. And it is an incredible thing to do to your body. It's really not. I mean, we shouldn't be doing 8 shows a week, is my absolute, honest opinion. It's too many shows a week. Obviously, it's driven by wanting to make as much money as possible for people, but really, 8 shows a week is too many shows to do the exact same physical workout every single night. Is an odd thing to do to your body, especially 2 times on a Wednesday and a Saturday. It's incredibly unhealthy, I think, especially if you're singing to your extremes. And in Kinky Boots, I very much was singing to my extremes. I needed to be sort of 80% or higher to do it, And so, as I've done throughout my entire career, in my second year at drama school, I joined the band, and I didn't drink. I've never smoked. I've never done anything more interesting than drinking or smoking in terms of drugs. I live as cleanly as possible. I eat incredibly healthy. When I'm working, when I'm not working, I eat like a pig. But if I'm in a show, and particularly if I'm feeling a little under, I eat, like a monk. Is that a thing? I guess not. But I eat incredibly well, and I just look after my voice. And I speak to there's a few teenagers that I teach one-to-one, and a lot of what I talk about is taking the stress out of it if you possibly can, and recognizing that what you're asking your body to do is incredibly difficult. It is only a muscle, and it's a very small muscle in truth, and it's incredibly robust. Like, you do incredible things with it. And so at the moments where it's not quite there, at the moments where it goes completely, or that you really need a rest, that's okay. That's okay. Just let it rest. You wouldn't run marathon after marathon after marathon and then be surprised when your legs hurt. Like, the fact of the matter is, you will get tired if you use your voice as much as we do. You will get tired, and you just need to stop. And you can have as much magic honey, which I call Manuka honey, which is useless, or any sort of anything from Chinatown, the magic elixir, or throat comfort tea, or strepsils, or what are those things called? All those different mints and whatever you can put in your body. They do nothing, because your voice is here and you're sucking a sweet. And there's a reason why when you swallow, you don't stop breathing. They're in very different places. All that stuff is just just convincing yourself you don't need to stop and rest. And what you need to do is stop and rest. And so in those moments you get to rest, if you're in an 8-show week, when you wake up in the morning, you probably shouldn't speak. You should probably just stop speaking and start speaking from midday. I'm a dad, so I can't do that. I'm up doing silly voices at 6:30 in the morning. But you need to rest. And so what I would say to anyone who worries about their voice is, be careful with it. Make sure your technique is as great as possible. Aim for a clear, clean tone. If you can create a clear, clean tone, then you are singing well. It's as simple as that. And then if your voice gets tired and if your voice goes, you rest. That's it. That's all there is to it. There is no magic spell. And every voice with the most perfect technique will get tired if you use it too much. Every leg, however perfectly formed it is, running marathons every day, will get tired. And you wouldn't beat yourself up. You wouldn't panic if your legs started aching, if they felt like they're going to fall off after a gym session. You'd go, well, yeah, of course. I've been using it a lot. And that's what you do with your voice.
Mm-hmm. With regards to training, Katie Rose has a question here. How did you? I'll put it on here. God, this is why I should wear my glasses. But oh goodness, reflect. You find your training at LIPA. Do you keep all of your training with you, or have you found that you've learned the majority on the job?
the most I learned at LIPA, I was very lucky in that they got outside directors to come in every year and directors. And I was incredibly fortunate to be in a show every year with a director called Adam Penford, who went on to direct stuff at the National Theatre and now is the artistic director at the Nottingham Playhouse. And he is one of the most, because I have to say that, he's the most wonderful director I've ever worked with, both as a person and as a director. He's so insightful, he's so smart. His knowledge of your own role is vastly more than you have of it. He's an incredible director. And I was very lucky to work with him every year, and that's who I learned from, because effectively we then did do the job. You know, we were in shows and he directed us, and I learned how to work with the director. I learned how to take the notes. I learned how to do better, and I learned that year in, year out. In terms of my training, I'm not entirely sure I learned an awful lot at LIPA in truth, and that's not to take anything away from LIPA, because it is 10 years since I was there. So the whole entire faculty and the entire syllabus will be entirely different. So I had a nice time there, and I learned a lot from Adam and from another director called Abigail Anderson. But in terms of my voice classes, I learned nothing about my voice until I left and joined a band. And then I learned everything about my voice, and I learned by losing my voice, and I learned by rebuilding my voice, and I learned by singing until my voice was exhausted, and I learned everything about my voice from there on in. It was a trickier road. I wish I had taught me more about it at LIPA, but you know, I learned all that on the job, really. And like I say, it's taken nothing away from LIPA and what it has offered to other people. But for me, I took a lot from the directors. I didn't take an awful lot from the classes, and a lot of it felt like it was kind of, how do we make a course we could probably do in a year last for 3 years? That's kind of what it felt like at times, because it was very stretched out. And we did a lot of repeating things that, when I look back on it, I think nobody does those things. They don't exist within the industry, but they were given a lot of importance within my training. And there's a lot of things, even by the third year I went, and I would listen, this makes me sound like I was kind of quite cocky through my training, which I wasn't at all. I was so eager to learn, and I tried absolutely everything. It's only in hindsight, so maybe even like 5-10 years later, that I look back and went, nobody does those things. Those aren't useful skills that we were taught. There's a lot of fleshing out of stuff, which I'm sure happens at every drama school. And I kind of look back and go, it wasn't as vital as perhaps they might want us to think. And it was just working with directors that was the most vital thing. And then obviously beyond that, going into the industry, working with more and more directors was where I really started to learn. And again, like I said early on, watching the people around me, watching other actors, watching directors, watching what works and what doesn't, watching people online and seeing and listening to interviews like this and going, oh, okay, I never thought of it like that. And then just learning myself, all that stuff I just said about my voice, I worked out on Waitress. You know, it was only in Waitress that I went, I don't know, why am I sucking Strepsils all the time? It's doing nothing. You know, I'm just tired. You have a rest. You know, we're forever learning, and that's the thing. So yeah, hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it certainly does. I'm just looking at the time. No, ladies and gentlemen, we have 7-ish minutes, well, under 7 minutes remaining. Try and get one question in, and we'll try and get it in to David. But David, as we're approaching the end of this Q&A, is there any just perhaps tips, or when you find a moment in where there are challenges, is there something that you look to, someone that you look to, a show, a particular song you listen to that really just helps you drive, that might help someone that's listening right now live or on playback, that could, you know, keep them going, especially in difficult times like these?
I think I would like you just to remember me saying this. So when you get to that point in any of your lives or careers or training or whatever, I want you just to remember this moment with David Hunter, and remember me saying, you're okay. The thing you're panicking about is okay. It's not, your voice isn't broken. Your audition will be fine. All those, the amount of pressure we heap on ourselves, and I do today. I wish I had my own David Hunter to hit me around the head from time to time, which I guess I do. But trust me, it's okay. Like I speak to these students, the things that they worry about because of what some terrible teacher has told them at some point, or what one of their peers has said to them at one point, and the things they hold with them their entire training and careers. Most of them will not be true. The thing you're worrying about is not true. If you consider where I was at the end of Kinky Boots and how worried I was that I might never do this again, it was purely down to me. There was always a way out. There was always a way to go, I need to step back from this and say, I got to stop. You can always take that break. You can always just take the pressure off yourself. If you wake up and your voice isn't great, it's okay. If you go in and balls an audition, it's okay. Just keep moving forward. Honestly, everything is okay. Everything is okay.
David, thank you so much for coming to see us at the CCI. It's been an absolute pleasure. Sending lots of love to the family, and I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers, bye.
That was David Hunter, everyone. Righty. Oh my goodness, absolutely sensational. Stay tuned. Have a bit of a nice drink, drop of water. Come 1 o'clock, we have a Latin dance class coming your way with Eddie Slattery. Yes, he's back.